A struct is a construct that is almost identical to a class. The major difference is that structs are value-type objects, while classes are reference-type objects. This means that when you pass a struct object to a method, the method will receive a copy of the object and won't be able to make changes to it outside the method. It's usually best to use classes instead of structs, as there are many features of classes that aren't supported by struct objects. However, it isn't possible to pass a class object by value, so if there's a special need to do this, you may find a struct more appropriate. The limitations of structs are that they cannot have constructor methods without any arguments, and they cannot extend classes, nor can classes extend structs. You'll learn about extending classes in Lesson 4.10. You may wonder why I'm teaching you about structs when I don't advocate that they should ever be used. The reason is that you may need to maintain another programmer's code which uses structs. In my entire professional career, I've never used a struct in my own real-world code, because classes provide a much better solution. To begin this lesson, open the Mathland project from your sample files folder. And open sequences.aspx in Design View. When this page is finished, it will display various mathematical sequences when the button is clicked. Now open sequences.cs. Note that this isn't the code behind file for sequences.aspx, but is a separate class file. This class calculates the mathematical sequences. It isn't the most efficient code, but it's a good example to demonstrate the difference between structs and classes. Let's examine the existing code. The mathematical sequences class is the most important part of this code. In a moment, you're going to change it into a struct. The populate sequences method accepts a mathematical sequences object as an argument and populates its properties appropriately. Now let's change the mathematical sequences class into a struct. Simply replace private class mathematical sequences with private struct mathematical sequences. Structs are defined in exactly the same way as classes, but using the struct keyword instead of class. Now let's test the page. Open sequences.aspx and click Debug. Start debugging. Now click Get Sequence, and an error occurs. This error indicates that the sequences.arithmeticSequence property is null. This happened because the populate sequences method failed to add the mathematical sequences to the object. This is because structs are value-type objects. The populate sequences method only received a copy of the sequences object, so it was unable to modify its properties. For more on this, see Lesson 4.1. Stop debugging now and return to Visual Studio. We'll now fix the error using the ref keyword. Return to sequences.cs and change the line that begins the populate sequences method to private void populate sequences ref mathematical sequences object to populate. By adding the ref keyword, you're explicitly telling the method that the object-to-populate argument should be sent by reference. Now open the code behind file of sequences.aspx. The code that calls the populateSequences method is marked with an error. That's because you also need to use the ref keyword when you call the method. Change the line that's marked as an error to populateSequences ref sequences. You learned about the ref keyword in Lesson 4.1. Now let's test the page. View sequences.aspx in your web browser. Click Get Sequence. And this time, the sequence is returned without any problems. You've successfully modified the code to use a struct instead of a class. Because structs are value-type objects, this means that they are stored in the stack, whereas class objects are stored in the heap. For more on this, see Lesson 4.1. Because struct objects are stored in the stack, they will generally be slightly faster than class objects. It's best to avoid using large structs, as there is a limited amount of space in the stack. You should only use structs for small constructs that need to be accessed quickly. Close your web browser now and close Visual Studio. You've now completed Lesson 4.2. Create a struct.